That song actually carried a whole lot more meaning than I had actually heard when I decided to play it. So it is a beautiful song. That's Deneen is the name of the artist, and the song is "I Have a Dream" or "Have a Dream," something like that. The thing that caught my attention when I first heard it, that made me decide to ask Billy if I could play that at that spot, was it's time for us to live in the light. It's time for us to rekindle that dream. And the dream is not some far off thing that we have to work towards. The dream is the truth of us. And we have gotten away from that. And I say we, I mean, some of us do really well, some of us struggle some days are great, some days are bad. And that's what living in the light is not about. Living in the light is being fully connected with God all the time, even in the bad times. It is having a loving attitude all the time, not just in the good times. And it has been one of these wonderful weeks where every piece of work I did all came down to keeping our focus in the right place. Everything. I worked with many clients this week. This was my busy week for working with clients. Nearly every single one of them was working on keeping our focus where it serves us. All through the news, I'm getting bombarded with this message. The news, of course, is giving it to me in a different way, but that's what I got to stay focused. And some of the talks that Kathy and I have had, some talks that we've had with family members, it's like, okay, I got to talk about refocusing. The news brings us negativity every time we turn it on. And if you just watch TV news, probably 90% of that is negative information, negative messages. If you tune into Facebook or Twitter or any of the other social media, chances are you get even a bigger percentage of negativity thrown at you. Now, Kathy and I have pretty much stopped watching the television news because it had gotten so negative. Well, when this topic came up, I started paying attention to what I was getting in my news feed on Facebook and LinkedIn and some of the other things. And most of that is just as negative. And the problem is that the negativity I'm hearing on Facebook is somebody's opinion based on fear, not really based on any facts. They heard a story and their imagination went crazy, and so they wrote it down. And then somebody else responds to that, and then somebody else responds to that, and next thing you know, we've got fights, and we have arguments, and we have hate, and we have sadness, and we have despair. And I decided to turn it off. I go in there to check every once in a while. I still use it to promote things, and but spending much time on Facebook, it's just not working for me, and probably doesn't work for most of us. There are some great things on all the social media, and you just have to look at it. Well, this is what I'm talking about today. It's about refocusing. When we focus on the negative, our view of the world condenses, and it gets to a point where it's all tunnel vision, and all we can see is the horrendous acts that are happening around us. It plays into our fears, and our fears feed it, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger all the time, focusing only on more negative and more negative and more negative. All possibilities go away. All hope goes away. Judgment sets in, and judgment condenses things even more. We look at a great example of this is all the action that happened in Ferguson, Missouri. I think that's the name of the town, Ferguson, where there was an incident, and by most people's standards, the incident that happened was probably a negative incident. probably nothing. It was negative. The incident itself was bad enough. Now, what got infused into that was judgment. People started judging good, bad, right, wrong, working or not working, however they came up with it. There was judgment about it, which created division and sides, and people went to battle against each other. Hate grew out of that. The more acts of violence and more acts of badness, if you want to define it, occurred, and that became news. And the news media jumped all over the original incident, and then they fed on everything that happened after that. It grew and it grew and it grew, but the whole time, what is growing is hate and anger and negativity, which keeps things focused on hate and anger and negativity. It was very difficult to see beyond that. As I look back on it, I realized that the acts that were happening started creating hate towards the people who were doing the acts. Even though we weren't there with them, we weren't truly a victim to what was going on, people who were not in Ferguson, Missouri, were starting to choose sides. And it was creating hate. That hate for the individuals doing the act turned into a hate for that community. Ferguson, Missouri, while those actions are not happening right now, has a long road of healing to go. Not only because of what happened there, but because of the energy that got sent into it. On the flip side is Charleston. We've talked about the incredible news out of Charleston, South Carolina, where the shooting happened at the church. Well, instead of buying into the hate and the anger and the sadness, they chose to send love into that community, chose to send love and forgiveness into it. They looked at that act, they gave it love, they gave it forgiveness, and look what happened to the media. The media said, that's not newsworthy, we're going to go find something else. Charleston was in and out of the news so fast, and you know what's good about that? Is they got to get away from the nonsense and get to the healing. They got to do the grief that they needed to do, and they got to heal. Powerful, powerful message. We have a media that's telling us what's important, and what's important in their eyes is not love, and is not forgiveness, and is not goodness. They are telling us that we have to hate, we have to be negative, we have to see violence. And guess what? It's our responsibility to change it. I can't go up to the NBC News and say, change this, and expect any results. But I can choose to tune in to positive things. I can choose to tune out the negative things. I can refocus my attention. And when I refocus my attention, I influence someone else to refocus theirs. And when they refocus, somebody else refocuses. And it's a chain reaction, and before long the media will go, we better tune into this. There are good, positive outlets out there. And I'm a part of one, and I'm not going to brag on my show, but Empower Radio is an outlet for positive messages. Brent Carey, the guy who created that and owns that, was tired of what we're talking about. He was tired of the negative media. And he created a radio station that has only empowering messages and shows. So it's out there. That's not the only one. That's just the one I'm familiar with because I'm part of it. So it's out there. So when we tune in to the love, when we tune into goodness, when we tune into happy, we expand and we elevate our life, our experience. So how do we do that? How do we stay focused on that? Because when you tune into the negative, it really is something that grab hold of you and pull you down. Perfect example is when you're sick. Even a cold can get you focused on that cold so strongly that it's hard to focus on anything else. What Luana's been through, she's been amazing to have the outlook that she's had and be able to focus on the love. What you went through could have easily drug you into that hole, and you didn't allow it. That's amazing. I have a very a pretty good friend who he was diagnosed with cancer, and his diagnosis was one that he justifiably could have walked out of that doctor's office and said, "I'm done. I give up. There's no sense fighting this." But instead, he walked out of there and he said, "You know, this is only about 2% of me. The rest of the 98% is really healthy, so that's what I'm focusing on." This guy was going through treatments like anybody else that would have had that, and most of the people that had that treatment were laid up, feeling sorry for themselves or fighting for their lives or whatever. This guy, he was a photographer, and he was out climbing rocks in Oregon on the Pacific Ocean, blazing trails to get a picture. He did not let it stop him. He focused on the good. And because he focused on the good, he added life to the years that he spent after the diagnosis. The cancer ended up getting him.
There is a new commercial about cancer. I don't know if y'all have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
It starts off with a, you see it, the girl said, "What did it take you? Took my hand."
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then the next person said, "It took me that."
Mm-hmm.
Took my brother.
Yeah.
Each one spoke about what cancer done in her family.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't a negative thing. They just said, "It's bad."
Yeah.
And I can remember one night when it was so scary. I got another letter for cancer.
Mm-hmm.
To tell them what my life was like before it came.
Right.
But if we'll just, I love that commercial because they're saying, "No, we're going to win."
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to win because we can say we did.
Yeah. When you get that in your head and when you get that in your heart, you are going to win. You are.
They keep hearing stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it's positive and say positive, it'll make it change. It'll make it
Right. Positivity is what is going to shift this world. No doubt. No doubt. Until I heard the true meaning of that song, the way I was going to start this out is, does it seem like this world is becoming a more evil and a more wicked place to live? And it depends on what you tune into. Just like with cancer or any kind of illness, if you tune into that, you're going to see the evil and the wicked in it. If you turn into love and goodness and healing and health, you're going to see more of that. The truth is, there's something going on with your body. But also as true is that love is still there. You are still one with God. And when we see through the eyes of God, we see things differently. When we see through the eyes of God, we can look at that situation in Ferguson, Missouri, and we can see the thousands of acts of kindness that are happening in that community that we don't get to see on the news. We know it's happening. If it wasn't happening, Ferguson, Missouri would still be in an uproar. But there is good there. And we have to see with the Christ mind, with eyes of God, as expressions of God. When we look through that, we can see love, we can see healing, and we can influence healing. What I discovered when I was working on this talk is that I do influence not only myself, not only the people around me, but I influence the situations that I look at. The nuclear meltdown in Japan that happened 2 or 3 years ago, whenever it was. When I look at that, if I look at that with fear, I add fear into that situation, even though I'm not there. I send that energy. And since we are all part of a universal energy, we truly do influence that situation. Even though I was not holding Luana's hand through the whole thing that she's been through, I was sending love, I was sending healing, I was sending peace. And whether she felt it or not, I'm not sure. But I do know that that influenced what was happening with her. Mm-hmm.
Always. Go to the hospital and guess who I can get? The most kind, wonderful person
Uh-huh.
that could have been there.
Yeah. Yeah. We attract like energies. So yeah, if you go in with a really positive attitude, you'll find positive people to surround yourself with. Yeah. But my influence really does help. So here's something for you to consider. One of the things I learned a long time ago is if we're not moving forward, we're moving backwards. There's no standing still. There's really no neutral. We're either condensing our belief system and our way of life, or we're expanding and elevating it. The same is true with what we input into situations. If I am not sending love and peace and an expression of God into every situation, I am hindering its healing. I am holding it back from growing. I'm silencing its happiness. It doesn't mean I'm the only person responsible for that person or that situation's healing and love, and I don't have that kind of power. But if I'm not helping it elevate and expand, I am helping it revert back and shrink. So consider that. Today, before we leave, I want to challenge you. I want to invite you, would be a better word. Invite you to focus on your happiness. Focus on your peace. All of the things that you have in your life that you can be grateful for. Focus on those things. Take time each day to do that. Send love into that situation even deeper. Because what I found is when we send love, when we practice this in times of good things, when things really are working well in our lives, if we're practicing gratitude, if we're practicing spreading love and spreading peace, when the bad things happen, it's not near as bad. We've got a foundation built. So the challenge or the invitation to you is focus more fully on the goodness in your life and help it elevate and expand and overflow into other people as well.